Hi students, welcome to this next e-lesson video, this one over sentence diagramming. As with all of these videos, please feel free to pause and rewind at any time to take notes, rewatch, or catch up. Here's what we're looking at today. Our topics include why diagram a sentence, why is this an important thing to do? We're going to take a look at the Reed-Kellogg method of diagramming sentences for just a moment because then we're going to look at the parsing tree method, and that's the method that we're going to use in my class. It's my preferred method for diagramming sentences. So first of all, why diagram a sentence? Not as many students diagram sentences anymore, but I remember when I was in school, in grade school, this was a big thing that we did in our I guess, reading classes, spelling classes, whatever we had for English language arts in elementary school when I went through. And it was a real drag for a lot of students because the process is very tedious, and at a very young age you feel like, well, I already know how to speak correctly, I already know how to say a sentence and write a sentence, why sit there and put myself through the torture of breaking it up and deconstructing it? Well, there's a number of reasons to diagram a sentence. First of all, it helps us visualize the relationships between the parts of a sentence. And as I said in class today, the difference between a real writer and someone just pretending is knowing what the heck those structures are that you're writing down. And by diagramming a sentence, we see the relationships between those structures, those clauses, those phrases, and the words that make up those clauses and phrases. Diagramming a sentence will help us find that essential structure that all sentences must have, the independent clause, and then within the independent clause, the essential structure that all independent clauses must have, the subject-verb pair, on down the list. Diagramming sentences also help us determine what is modifying what in a sentence. What is modifying anything in that essential structure? What is modifying anything? What is modifying the modifier? It just helps us see those relationships between various elements within a sentence. Here's the Reed-Kellogg method. Some of you may be familiar with this method. This was the method that was taught to me back when I was in grade school. It was developed way back in the 19th century, and this is still taught today, still created today by grammarians. And it does demonstrate the relationship between words pretty well. You can see that they have a sort of, I don't know, line chart thing here. I don't really know what the heck you'd call this. I really don't like this method, but they have the subject on the left side of a vertical line, the verb on the right side, followed by a direct object if there is one. So you get something like boys like rockets. There you go. You have more complex sentences. The boys, or the young boys, like really... Oh, the young boys really like video games. There we go. That's how you read that. This, again, is an okay method. It's visual. It shows us the relationship between words. Really modifies like. Video modifies game. The and young are attached to the noun boys. It does okay with that. But I don't really like it because... as I'm going to show you here in just a second, sentences aren't made up of words. Sentences are made up of clauses and phrases, and the Reed-Kellogg method doesn't really do very well in visually showing us how clauses and phrases work together to make whole sentences. Here's the method that we're going to use in AP Lang this year, the parsing tree. Parsing tree. It's a diagram with branches that sort of, I guess, looks like a tree, and it represents the syntactic structure of any unit according to some formal grammar. Yeah, it's used by linguists, it's used by general grammarians, it's also used by computer programmers. It's just a really good visualization of any sort of structured language, which computer code is a sort of structured language. So this is what we're going to be dealing with, and it looks like something like these. Yeah, we've got the sentence written at the bottom, and then we've got parts of speech, parts of phrases, and then the top level is the sentence itself. So you can kind of see how these work, and it sort of looks like hanging branches. I don't know. So we're going to be working with parsing trees. I think parsing trees are better for a couple of different reasons. First of all, I think they better visualize the structure of a sentence, not just the relationship between words. Second of all, parsing trees allow us to parse single phrases or single clauses within a sentence, whereas the Reed-Kellogg diagrams, it really doesn't look right if you just try to diagram a phrase or a clause. You really have to diagram the whole darn sentence for the structure, or for the diagram to look right. Whereas parsing trees, we can take as little of or as small of a unit out of a sentence or as big a unit as we want. Okay, so let's try one together. That's what's going to be the bulk of this e-lesson. We're going to try one together. I'm going to get under the document camera here. I have no real way of doing one of these on the computer here. I know that there are sentence parsing programs out there, but that's not going to help you learn how to do this. Trust me. I need to. We're going to have to just write it out by hand. So I'm going to get under the document camera, and we will write one of these down together. Go ahead and get out a sheet of notebook paper. You can open up to your spiral if you like, and be prepared to copy down what I do. Alright, so here is the sentence I'm going to be working with on this very first exercise. I believe this is the very first sentence from the reading homework that is also assigned to you tonight from I Live in a Van Down by Duke University. And it starts like this. I was lying on the floor of my van where the middle pilot seats used to be. Notice how I've left out my ending punctuation. I've actually taken out all the punctuation for this sentence. You should go ahead and do that when you're parsing a sentence because the punctuation will just get in the way. Just go ahead and eliminate it all. Now, you can just go ahead and create a whole tree that parses out this big long sentence, but doing so is very difficult. And so what I prefer to do is, just to illustrate, as we're just kind of getting started working with our first parsing trees, is to kind of take just some essential structures from within this sentence and parse those out. Okay. So first things first, let's take a look just at this short little snippet of our independent clause. I was lying. Okay. I was lying. Let's look at that first and let's parse that out. Okay. I was lying. Now, first things first, the biggest difficulty in parsing a sentence is deciding how much space to leave above where you actually write the sentence. I'm going to go ahead and tell you how many lines to kind of skip in your notebook paper, but when you're doing these just on your own, unfortunately there's going to be a little bit of trial and error. You might have to do some erasing, you might have to do a rough draft of your parsing tree and then come back, because being able to calculate in your head how many levels to the branches is very difficult, as you'll see here in just a minute. So my top level is going to be right here. I know for a fact that I need 1, 2, 3. So I can start my sentence down here. I was lying is what we started with. Write that nice and big because that's all we're working with for right now. Excellent. So we know that this is a clause because it contains a subject-verb pair. The subject the subject I, and then was lying is the verb. Okay, and we know that it is an independent clause because it can stand alone. So on the top level, I'm just going to call it what it is. It is an independent clause. I'm going to abbreviate it. I-C, independent clause. Okay, go ahead and do that. Make sure you've counted up the lines correctly. I-C should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines above I was lying. Okay. Next, we need to identify the elements of an independent clause, which we all know that a clause is made up of a subject-verb pair, but essentially all that is a noun phrase and a verb phrase. The subject of your sentence has to be at least one noun phrase. The predicate of your sentence needs to be at least one verb phrase. And so our noun phrase is right here, the word I. So we're just going to write the noun phrase up here, just identify it up here. NP for noun phrase. This is a single word noun phrase. Remember, phrases can be as short as just one word long. Okay, noun phrase. Now we're going to need to identify the other half of our independent clause here, which is a verb phrase. And we know that our verb phrase is just the predicate of our independent clause here. Was lying is our verb phrase. And that's a single verb phrase right there. All right. All right, so we've got the parts of our independent clause, the noun phrase, the verb phrase. Now we want to break apart each of these phrases. Our noun phrase is made up of just one word. That's easy to break apart. There's just one noun. Okay, so we just write the part of speech of the words are part of our noun phrase, and there we go. Our verb phrase is made up of two words here, but as you remember from your homework over verbs, whenever you identify the subject-verb pair, whenever you identify verbs, period, you always want to include auxiliaries with those verbs. So was lying is technically our whole verb. Okay, it's a whole verb. And now the only thing that's left is just drawing the branches. Feel free to use a ruler for this. I know we're AP students. Sometimes that just makes us feel better if our lines are all straight. There is a parsing tree for our first little sentence right there. Nice job. A really simple independent clause. We've parsed it out and created a parsing tree. Beginning with the top level, this is an independent clause. Independent clauses are divided into this independent clause has just one noun phrase and just one verb phrase. Our noun phrase is made up of just one noun, and that noun is I. Our verb phrase is made up of just one verb, and that verb is was lying. Okay. Let's try another one from that sample sentence. Just draw a line to keep our trees separate. There we go. Let's try another one. Let's try a prepositional phrase. We've done a clause. Let's try a prepositional phrase. Let's try of my van. Okay. I've already counted this one out, so I'll help you again. You need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So just write of my van. Excellent. And we know that since that's headed by a preposition, okay, and prepositional phrases have to contain a head word or a preposition plus an object, that this is a prepositional phrase. So we'll start at the top and just call this a prepositional phrase, a PP. Right? Excellent. Now let's look at the essential structure of a prepositional phrase. Up here with our independent clause, we knew that all independent clauses have to have a noun phrase and a verb phrase. That's the essential structure of an independent clause. A prepositional phrase, the essential structure of that is it must contain one preposition and one object of the preposition. And the object is always going to be a noun phrase. Okay? So first of all, let's find our preposition. Our preposition is just of. Right? Just of. So directly above of, just going to write P-R-E-P. Can't really write P because I could confuse that with phrase or pronoun or something. So I'm going to go ahead and write P-R-E-P. All right. And our noun phrase, the object of our preposition, is my van. So I'm just going to write, kind of split the middle and write N-P above my van. Okay. Now, the preposition's already been identified. There's nothing further to identify. Of is just our preposition. So we can just draw a line from preposition to of, and we're already done there. Our noun phrase, though, is made up of two different parts of speech here. My, which is a determiner. It's kind of funny looking D, but whatever. And van, which is a noun. Okay? Excellent. And then we just draw in the lines, the branches, whatever you want to call them. There. There is another beautiful parsing tree. So, of my van is a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases are composed of one preposition followed by a noun phrase. This particular noun phrase is made up of a determiner, my, and the noun van. And our preposition was of. Okay? That's how that should look right there. Excellent. Let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at a structure inside of this structure. Let's take a look at the noun phrase let's back up. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at a phrase that contains kind of two phrases. Let's take a look at the floor of my van. The floor of my van. Let's try that one. That will be our next one. So again, I'm just going to draw a line under here just to separate them out, keep them separate. Excellent. The floor of my van, we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sorry, I'm counting my notes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I can just write the floor of my van. Cool. That is a complete, whoops, it's off the camera, sorry. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, there we go. The floor of my van. There we go. This is a whole noun phrase, but as a lot of you already see, there is a prepositional phrase within our noun phrase. That's because this is modifying a part of the noun phrase floor, which is our main noun. So we've already identified that this whole thing is stuff. Okay, so we call it a noun phrase, because the head word of this phrase is floor. That's the essential part that makes it what it is, and that's a noun, so this whole thing's a noun phrase. Okay? And we know that a noun phrase can contain a lot of different things. A noun phrase can contain a noun plus any embedded adjectives or determiners and any other adjectival modifiers. And we have all three of those things right here. First of all, let's start with the simple things. The, we have the determiner, the. We have floor, which is our noun, for N. And then we have of my van, which is a prepositional phrase acting as a big old adjective. It's acting adjectively. Okay? So we can already just kind of draw some of our lines. We can do this as we go this time. We know that our noun phrase is made up of a determiner, a noun, and a prepositional phrase. All right. I'm going to get out my ruler for this one because I'm a GT student too, or an AP student too. There we go. Those are done because determiner is there's just one word, the. Noun, there's just one word, floor. Now let's break down our prepositional phrase of my van. Guess what? Parsing trees are modular. We've already done of my van. We can just copy this down. Yeah. So starting here, we'll turn this into this right here. We know that this up here, prepositional phrase, is made up of preposition and noun phrase, and then still just copying of and whoops, sorry sorry about that. Preposition was of, there we go, noun phrase, determiner, noun, there. You see, if I just kind of cover that up, this is the same as what that is above there. There we go. It's kind of hard to cover just that part up so you can see. There we go. This and this are the same. It's because these are modular. What I did is I parsed out a larger unit that contained this unit of my van. Okay, I parsed out the entire noun phrase, the floor of my van. All right. Let's take a look at something a little more complicated. Let's try... here we go. Let's try a couple of prepositional phrases back to back. On the floor of my van. Actually, this is one big prepositional phrase, on the floor of my van. But we have on the floor is our main prepositional phrase, and then a second prepositional phrase modifies part of the main prepositional phrase. So here's how we do that one. I'm completely out of room on the front, so I'm just going to do it on the back here. That's all right. Let's see, how many spaces do I need for this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I need 11 spaces for this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Here we go, 11. And I'm just going to write on the floor of my van, because that's what we're dealing with. On the floor of my van. Cool. So a minute ago on the back side of this page we already did the floor of my van. Guess what? We can just copy that down from the other side of this page. So let's take a look back at that. Here we go, the floor of my van. Alright. Yeah, just kind of flip back and forth and we can kind of copy this down one step at a time. There we go. The noun phrase was up here. Excellent. All right, now we can do this pretty simply. We're just going to copy it down. You don't have to follow me exactly right now. You can turn back and forth if you already think you've got the hang of this. So all I'm doing is copying straight off of what I did on the other side, on the last one, because all we did was look at a bigger unit that contained this. Okay. This is what I mean by feel free to pause, rewind at any time to catch up. All right. Once again, all I've done is copy this from the previous side because a minute ago I did this structure already, the floor of my van. There it is right there. I just happened to have it written out next to me, so I wasn't flipping back and forth. So I've copied all of that out. All I really need to do now is figure out how that's fitting in with the overall prepositional phrase. On the floor of my van, we've already said, is one big prepositional phrase. So let's go up one more level. This whole thing is one big PP, prepositional phrase. Okay, and really the only unit I've added, prepositional phrases we know are composed of a noun phrase, and before that noun phrase must come a preposition. So this one was actually pretty simple to do because we were just mainly copying. This is why I love parsing trees, because you can parse them out one structure at a time rather than the Reed-Kellogg method where you just have to basically sit there and do the whole darn sentence. There we go. Cool. That's a more complex structure. We're adding additional branches to our parsing trees here. This is a one big prepositional phrase that's modified by another prepositional phrase inside of it. Excellent. Let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at the last. We haven't done anything with this last part of the sentence, where the middle pilot seats used to be. We know that this is a clause because it contains a subject-verb pair. Seats used to be, okay? And we know that it's a dependent clause because you can't really start a clause with the word where and have it make a complete thought. Where the middle pilot seats used to be, you need something else there. What kind of dependent clause is this? Let's see. I was lying on the floor of my van where the middle pilot... it's telling us where I was lying. It's telling us more about where I was. So this is an adverb clause. Yeah, it's an adverb clause. I could get into the technicals of what it's modifying, but trust me, it's an adverb clause. Let's parse out this adverb clause. Just start a new one. There we go. Now for this one, let's see, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just 7 lines. 1, 7, there we go, so I can write my clause here. Where the middle pilot seats there we go, where the middle pilot seats used to be. And we've already talked about what this overall structure is. This is an adverb clause. ADVC, adverb clause. And we know that all adverb clauses have to contain a subject-verb pair, so one noun phrase, one verb phrase, plus headed by a subordinating conjunction. So those three things. Subordinating conjunction has always got to come first. Our subordinating conjunction here is where. Okay, it's just one word, so that's easy enough. And then now we need to find the other two elements, our noun phrase and then our verb phrase, because a clause has to have a noun doing the action of a verb. So let's see. Fix that really quick. Our noun phrase, the middle pilot seats, that's the thing in this sentence that used to be. So just kind of write noun phrase up here, just kind of center it. That's all I'm really trying to do. And then our verb phrase, used to be. Excellent. And all three of those elements work toward making our adverb clause. Okay? So, noun phrase, let's see what the parts of our noun phrase are. We don't have any phrases inside of our noun phrase that we need to diagnose, so we can just go straight to the parts of speech. The is a determiner. Middle is a determiner. Pilot is an adjective, because it's describing what kind of seats, and finally seats is a noun. So those four elements make up our noun phrase. All right, now let's diagnose the parts of this verb phrase. This is a little different. Let's see. Used to be. Used to is an auxiliary. It's what we call I think it's a quasi-modal auxiliary. But as you can see, it's just sort of helping the verb be here. It's not really a verb in and of itself. Being is different than used to being, and so it creates a whole new verb. So this is just one verb. Just draw like that. One verb that makes up our verb phrase. There we go. Yeah, and once again, it's just one verb because you always look at a verb with its auxiliaries. Always look at a verb as a whole, with its auxiliaries as a whole verb, because it doesn't, whole meaning of the verb changes if you remove the auxiliaries. Okay, so we have our complete adverb clause here. All right, we've done just about every part. We've done every single part of this sentence now. I was lying on the floor of my van where the middle pilot seats used to be. Let's put all of this together into one big parsing tree. Let's try that. Go ahead and set this sheet of notebook paper aside. Get out a fresh sheet so that you can have this to look at. Because remember, we've already done all the components of this big sentence. So a lot of this is just going to be copying and putting it in the right place. All right. So here is my big original sentence. If you want to know how many lines to skip, if you start with the top here, we're going to use this top line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It's on the 17th line. Write out your sentence. Okay. And this time, our top level, we're not talking about a clause anymore or a phrase. We're talking about a whole sentence. So I'm just going to write S for sentence. Okay? Excellent. Now, we know that a sentence has to be composed of at least one independent clause, which we've already identified. I was lying on the floor of my van. But this particular sentence also has a dependent clause, an adverb clause that's right here, where the middle pilot seats used to be. So we can divide this thing in half between the IC, the independent clause, and the adverb C, the adverb clause. Okay? And both of those things are making up this particular sentence. Okay? Remember, the only requirements of a sentence is that it have an independent clause. This particular sentence has an independent clause plus an adverb clause. So let's take a look back at some of our notes. Yeah. By looking back at our notes, we see I was lying. We've got on the floor of my van, so I can just kind of start copying that in. Yeah. I know that, let's see, this IC, this independent clause is made up of a noun phrase. I've got this copied down on that first page. And a verb phrase, because all independent clauses are. And I know exactly what my noun phrase and verb phrase are, because I've already done I was lying and on the floor. My noun phrase is still I. Oops. Maybe I should get my ruler out for this one. There we go. That makes me feel better. I know that makes you feel better too. All right. Now let's see what our components of the independent clause verb phrase are. It's was lying on the floor of my van. That whole little bit there. So we know that a verb phrase has to contain at least one verb. This one has the was lying verb as well as this big long prepositional phrase on the floor of my van. So the verb was lying. We'll go ahead and mark that. And of course my caret was completely off, but that's fine. There we go. Was lying. And we've already done this big prepositional phrase on the floor of my van, so I can just look back at my notes here. Yeah, right here, because this particular verb phrase is a verb plus a prepositional phrase. And I can just copy that right here. Yeah. Cool. So we've got the preposition on, and then a noun phrase. Oh, it's a bigger noun phrase. I'll move it over a little bit. I forgot about that. So the preposition on. The noun phrase this time is made up of the determiner the. Floor is a noun. Again, I'm just copying off of work I've already done. And then there was a prepositional phrase embedded in this noun phrase. Yeah, there we go. Go ahead and connect some lines here that I forgot. There we go. Verb phrase was made up of the verb followed by a prepositional phrase. That prepositional phrase was made up of a preposition followed by a noun phrase. That noun phrase was a determiner, a noun, and then another prepositional phrase, and that other prepositional phrase was a preposition, a determiner, and a noun. Oops. Getting ahead of myself. Was a preposition and a noun phrase, I'm sorry. And now we get to determiner and noun. There we go. Excellent. Awesome. There's half of our sentence down. And we know from already having done the adverb clause that this one is even easier. There's not even as many levels to this. So let's just copy down what we had for our adverb clause. We know that our adverb clause was made up of a subordinating conjunction, an SC, and a noun phrase, of course, because every clause has to have a noun phrase, and a verb phrase, because every clause has to have a verb phrase. Our subordinating conjunction, just draw straight down where our noun phrase was made up of a few things: the, middle, pilot, seats. So remember, determiner, all articles. Middle is determining which seats we're talking about. Pilot is actually modifying seats. There we go. I'll get out my ruler for all these. Cool. Excellent. There we go. And then finally my verb phrase, and we'll be just about done. Verb phrase, we know that used to be is all one verb. So we're just going to draw one line connecting all three. Like that. There we go. That's my verb phrase. Let's connect the last lines here. And just in time for my pencil to break. There it is. Wow. That is a really complex parsing tree right there. That is really complex. But as you can see, it's just a matter of isolating smaller units, parsing those out, and then adding those to larger units, parsing that out, and just adding and adding and adding. And finally, you can parse out the entire sentence. All right. All right, now I'd like you to try one all on your own, and I've got actually a simpler sentence for you to try this time. Try one all on your own on another sheet of notebook paper. Feel free to divide this one up into individual phrases, and it's really just one clause, but feel free to divide it up into individual phrases and kind of work it out as we did it in chunks. But I want you to try this one on your own. For 2 whole months, I had been secretly living in my van on campus. Try that one on a separate sheet of notebook paper. Remember, when you parse out any sort of structure, it all has to fit on one line. Okay, so you'll have to write small enough across the page that this whole thing fits, or orient your page horizontally. Either one, it doesn't matter to me. When you're done with this, what I'd like you to do is to go ahead and photograph this with your smartphone. And upload that image to the assignment, please, on the course website. That is the actual assignment component that goes with this. Is I want to see this particular sentence parsed out on your own on just a sheet of notebook paper or plain paper. It doesn't matter. And please upload that image. That'll be your assignment. All right. Thank you for watching. Feel free to watch this sentence again. I know that there was a lot of new stuff thrown at you there with the parsing trees. You've probably never done that before, but just keep practicing with these. Go back and watch some of those parts again. Watch what I did there. Once you get the hang of this, it's a really cool concept, and it really is a really cool way of showing what a sentence is and showing the structures of how we communicate, the machinery of how we communicate, if you will. Again, thanks for watching.